Welcome to We Question and Learn. This is Tom Pysz. We're fortunate to have Michael Outlaw, Community Liaison from the City of Erie. Welcome. I can tell it's you. You have the official badge on. And
Yes.
and you got by our security out front fairly easily. And a return guest, Brian Slawin, the Regional Director and Portfolio Manager. And you're up at the Ben Franklin Technology Partners Central and Northern Center for Emerging Technologies, and that's at...
Oh, my God, what a long title that is.
Well, yeah.
We're up in Knowledge Park, and
Yeah.
actually we moved into a wonderful new facility last fall and have had a number of events up there, and
I
we
missed
invite
that. I'm
everyone
sorry.
to come up. And
I didn't realize you moved. That's great.
just down the street,
Yeah.
but it's our own dedicated building. There's one other company in there, and now we're bringing our startups can actually come and work with us and be within steps of everybody, and it's actually really great. And that's kind of why we're here, is to really talk about what the community of Erie has told both official elected municipal leaders as well as the business community about their desires for a more diverse, inclusive, and equitable community. I love the downtown because of the energy, because of the people and all the things going on there. And I love Knowledge Park because it's almost 180 degrees. It's a wooded area. There's still lots of companies and lots of activity, but it's quiet and it's very serene. The folks at Barron have really done, led by Ralph Ford and Amy Bridger, they've done a masterful job of creating an environment in that community, the,
Going all
the
the way
brand
back
new
to Jack
building.
Burke and all that.
Yeah, it's really-
it's been amazing.
Yep.
And Michael, before you feel like we're neglecting you here, welcome to the studios. Now, Michael Outlaw is the community liaison for, you work with the mayor every day, right?
Yes, indeed.
Joe Schember. And Michael has, and Michael, your story is heart-rendering. It's encouraging. It makes me feel that in the world, there are good things, and good things come to good people.
Yes,
So I'm not going to steal your wind here, but you have an incredible story. Things were a little different for you in your younger years, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, things were. Grew up in the inner city. It was 10 of us, 5 boys and 5 girls. Yeah, I'm the third oldest.
Okay.
My parents was born down south Mississippi, Macon, Mississippi. They lived through the Jim Crow era. My mom, she had to pick cotton, just to make sure her father met the quota, right? So trying to escape the South, move north, to find,
Now,
better.
this is not that long ago, because you're only 40?
43.
You're a young man. And so this wasn't that long ago that your parents were involved in this.
Right, and so, but they instilled in us, good work habits, respect, old school methods. If the street lights were on, that's your sign to come in the house. Yeah. Right, I grew up.
Right, that's right, yeah.
Right, I grew up in that era.
Right with you, yeah.
But in the process of that, there's been I made some decisions that were not conducive to my long-term, sustainability as a law-abiding citizen. But, you live and you learn, right? You wise up, you're supposed to wise up, right? You change your circle of friends and, went to college, educated myself, and been involved with community work since dating back maybe like 10 years. Started out doing the community police relations group,
Yes.
working with Marshall Piccinini. He's now a judge, Erie County judge now. Working with Deputy Chief Mike Nolan, just doing police community-oriented work. How do we restore trust within the African American community alongside law enforcement? And then from there, just been, keep my hands to the plow, so to speak, and not looking back, and pressing forward, and working with the mayor to make sure there's, equity and diversity, inclusion for everyone. And that's
Well, you're
his
an
mission.
East High graduate. You have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from Edinburgh, a great
Yes.
school, a master's degree in administration of justice from Mercyhurst. So
Yes, indeed.
you've really worked pretty hard in the last few years. And how did you and the mayor come together?
I met the mayor. Well, at the time, I didn't know who he was. I saw him at. So we did this community police relations group at Pysz Elementary School. And we're talking about, again, how do we repair the breach of trust within, African American community and law enforcement. And I see this gentleman in the audience, and he's hearing the stories of people sharing their encounters with law enforcement, some positive, some not so positive. But he was moved, right, by what he was hearing. I said to myself, who is this guy who gets it? And from there, I reached out to his campaign with no expectations outside of just helping him knock on doors, because I believed in him and whatnot. I read his bio, I read his vision, his mission. And from there, I knocked on doors with him. My wife and I, my kids, we knocked on doors, and with, again, no expectations, right? We knocked on doors. He won. I said, well, okay, sir, have a good life. I see you when I see you.
And I'm sure he thanked you for your hard work.
He
too.
did, yeah. He really did. And he told me stick close. I'm like, all right. I'm not sure what that meant, but okay. Again, no expectation. The mayor, as we can all attest, he's a genuine person, right? He is the right person for Erie, Pennsylvania in this season. And his mission to end racism and bigotry and prejudice in Erie, Pennsylvania, that's a monumental task. However, he believes that we can do that. And the People's Supper was that first pebble in the water to cause this ripple effect that's going to really transform Erie, the county, and hopefully the nation. And we have the right man in office to do so. And again, the People's Supper is that platform that has, that is causing this ripple effect to take place.
I like your title, Community Liaison. That gives you a lot of flexibility to get out in the community, understand what's happening, plus what you know about the community, and relay that back to the mayor.
Yes. I think that's imperative to have an individual who understands the challenges of African Americans in the city, and who is also aware of the policies and procedures that's in place. Oftentimes when there's issues that arise within the community with law enforcement, there's this perception that, we address it and, it's over and done with. But there's so many other different dynamics in play behind the scenes that the public isn't aware of that sometimes become the contention within the community, because in some of their minds, they don't see the problem being resolved. But behind the scenes, we know that those, changes really happening within Erie Police Department and in the larger community. Our platform is respect for and from law enforcement, right? So both sides needs to be held accountable and responsible for their actions. So, but to tie back into my position, I think I have a unique perspective given my background, my challenges that I overcame, and then my current position. And then I think that's a perfect blend to really be a voice of reason and one who is going to be fair and understand that together we are better. So,
how did you and Brian Slawin meet? How did this all come about? This is the topic of the interview. How did this generate?
Well, at Ben Franklin, we looked at our portfolio and we recognized that it was not representative of the entire community. So my role, luckily, is not only Erie, but it's the 7 counties that surround Erie, right, down to Venango and Clarion and Mercer and Warren, Forest, all of those communities, Crawford, are my responsibility. And as we looked at where are these great entrepreneurs and where are they trying to do great work, we all recognized that it was not extremely well represented across all different cultures. So my first connection actually with the mayor's office was with Nikan Carpenter, who's Michael's role but to the New American community. So they work kind of as partners to cover the New American community and the minority community. And I talked with Nika and I said, here's what I'm trying to do and how can you be helpful? And she introduced me to Michael. And actually Nika and Michael came for a tour at Radius Co-work downtown, which is where we were meeting that day. And it struck me that here's 2 people, broadly diverse, at very high level within our community, walking through a space that had basically all white men. And I actually sat down in an office with them when we were talking. I said, what don't you see here? And they immediately were like, where's the diversity? Like, that's the challenge. And so that was very early in the mayor's administration, and we've been working together ever since.
And how do you go about marketing, speaking about, how do you get out and tell, what are you doing to get out and talk to people, other than like being here today? Thank you very much. But
well, you know, it's big things and it's everyday things, right? Just by walking the street together, or going to the same meeting together, or reaching out to diverse populations together or separately and collaboratively. I think it's, you know, the small everyday walk the walk, talk the talk type stuff. And then it's other bigger events like the People's Supper and what's going on right now. Kathy Rosdick is leading the
City Erie Focus Plan.
Exactly.
well, talk
going
about
out
that.
into
The People's
community.
Supper. I'm not.
Yeah.
Forgive me for not being familiar with it, but
The People's Supper, and just real quick,
Sure.
to digress to Brian's point about visiting his facility and not seeing diversity. I think the key word that Brian is getting at is we have to be intentional about diversity and inclusion. Right, we cannot. So Brian is, you know, he can attest to this. Brian is being intentional in with his efforts. Right, he is not sitting back waiting for diversity to come to him. He's pursuing diversity. Right, and that's very imperative to the success of Erie. So the People's Supper, it was designed to help community leaders break down barriers, deepen trust and understanding of each other. Over supper, right?
Oh, great. Yeah.
You just sit down and you know, we all eat every single day, I would hope, unless you are on a fast. But for the most part, you know, we all sit down and we have a meal together. And so the People's Supper is a platform where we can sit down, where we sat down over 6 months. From January of this year, and we just ended. The last supper was a couple weeks ago at the Bayfront Convention Center, and we sat down and we delved into conversation that are sometimes uncomfortable to have, right? But we did it in a way where the conversations were organized. They were questions that were structured, and so there were 4 affinity groups. 4 affinity suppers. Right, so the affinity suppers were individuals of the same race, right? So African Americans, New Americans, White Americans, and then we had the Latino Hispanic community. So during those 4 affinity suppers, each group were given a set of questions that pertain to their particular plight in Erie. For example, one of the questions that was given for the African American community was. So it said, for example, describe your first experience of racial injustice or discrimination here in Erie or somewhere else. Did it shape your worldview? If so, how? Right? A question for the Latino community was, describe your first experience of racial injustice. So again, each group had similar questions that were designed to bring out those uncomfortable conversations, right? And then we had like the bridging suppers. We came back together, began to express what we learned about ourselves. Because to be completely honest, I talk differently when I'm in a room that people who looks like me, right? And the same thing for
All of us.
right?
Sure.
So that's why the affinity suppers were so imperative, because it forced us to delve deeper and look at our own ways of thinking and challenges amongst ourselves, and how could we collectively come together and address these issues as a community.
And what we found was, and the mayor's staff was at all of the dinners. And so they
marvelous.
served as a bridge between the affinity groups and the collective.
Yes.
And so that provided a consistency of conversation, so that, for instance, in the White Ally Supper, which I participated in, one of the questions I think that was most striking to me was, when was the first time you realized you were white? And I'll be honest, I didn't have I really had to think that through. And the mayor's
And that's
staff used...
only because of where you were brought up, your environment, your
Exactly.
education. It had nothing to do with you being a good or a bad
Nope,
person.
absolutely right.
Same with you.
Correct.
You had a most stressful not upbringing, but a life that cause you to go almost 180 degrees to what you're doing. That is all the good you're doing in the community today. So this is already not a black or white or a Latino issue. It's he has one perspective, you have another.
There you go.
Neither is wrong.
There you go.
And you're trying to meld those together.
Yep.
I hope.
Well, I'm not meld. Maybe not exactly the goal. I think an understanding.
Okay.
And I think, and acceptance is also not the right term, at least not the one that I like. It's an active engagement of people who aren't your group, right? So it's easy to just go to the party and hang out with all the people who look like me because, I'm comfortable with that.
Right.
But what about, I actually was at a little get-together down in Meadville one day, and one of the young men from Allegheny College said, it's not sufficient enough to be white and woke. What you need to be is white, woke, and activated, and not to come over to the black community or the Latino community to save them. It's actually work in your own community, right? So I have a responsibility as a Caucasian, as a white male in this society, to actually be involved with the white community and saying there is a better path than the one that you don't even realize you're on or have purposely chosen. So I think there's a lot of power in Michael's word a bit ago, intentional, actually doing something, identifying a goal and doing something. And the People's Supper provided that platform for the entire city to do that.
Yes, yes.
Do you have goals and outcomes you'd like to see? Are you benchmarking your activities? I know it's brand new. 6 months is not a long time, although it sounds like you've accomplished quite a bit. What are your goals and plans? How are you measuring your outcomes?
So we haven't got to that point of measuring outcomes yet, but what we have done was over the course of the 6 months, there were 11 emerging project ideas. They were using multiple platforms to open minds and convey a strong message regarding equity, inclusion, and diversity. Create an Erie Promise program. Recognize local businesses with an Equity, Inclusion, Diversity Award.
Okay.
Create cultural diversity awareness, birth to boardroom trainings for HR professionals. Implement a Young People Supper. Develop a Erie Multicultural Community Fund. Community benefits agreements, promote workforce development programs to new Americans and minorities, develop a school curriculum in schools to include diversity and culture education, and using storytelling to create educational culture videos.
What a wonderful idea.
Right, and then facilitate an annual Better Together event.
Right.
So they're like 11 emerging themes.
Forgive me, my mind is not as quick and as wise as yours to list those quickly. Where could I go look that up? Is there a place I can find that, or can I communicate with you for that list?
Yes, you can definitely communicate with me for this list. We are in the process of building a platform directly into the City of Erie website.
So that's where it will be?
Yes.
Okay, that answers the question. So when you're ready, it will be there.
Yes, indeed.
And all those bullet points, those critical points will be posted.
So,
And Michael, share these 11 projects. These aren't, who can do this, or what happens here?
Right, so there were like 3 common themes, right? You know that these projects fell under. One was communication and outreach, education, and workforce development, right? So those were again the 3 common themes that these 11 projects fell under. So not anyone. So once we kind of like, filter down this list, and then put these projects in the matrix. Then we can begin to identify who can do what in the community. For example, implementing a Young People Supper.
I agree.
We honestly believe that the city wants to we want to lead that. However, we believe that it is imperative that the county schools in the Erie School District come together and have those kids begin to engage in a similar conversation that we had as adults. Because we know that, the children, they're the future leaders and judges and politicians and you name them, business owners. So if they don't begin to address their own differences, how do we expect the future to look differently, right? So for them to, for the county school and Erie School District to host a Young People Supper, I think that's going to yield great dividends.
It's not difficult, not that expensive, and it gets a lot of voices together.
Yeah, and I think all four universities and
Oh, there. Okay, I
several
was just going to
businesses
ask you. Yeah.
at the People's Summit that Michael referred to that happened in June, late June.
Yeah.
There were plus or minus 300 people at this dinner where a broader group of the community could experience what a People's Supper was about. When the young people's Supper came up as an idea, as a project, I don't know, half a dozen, 10 different entities said, we'll do
Absolutely.
that.
Yes,
Yep. And
yes,
so
yes.
garnering support is not going to be difficult. No. And well, I was going to ask about how are the colleges and universities who are very good in this community, how are they reacting to your program?
I
And
think
you already mentioned they're participating, but what?
I mean, the colleges and universities, actually, they were, some representative from all four local universities were a part of the People's Supper. So someone from their diversity inclusion office was a part of the People's Supper, right? Someone from their multicultural office. So we had them in the room, right, throughout the entire process, so they can be apprised of, the conversations, what, some action steps they can take, within their own universities. So in the near future, I just tell people, just please pay attention to their emails and watch the news and listen to the radio station, because there's going to be some action steps that's coming out of this initiative. But right now, we're not there. And again, it goes back to what I said earlier. Oftentimes, people, see things and hear ideas and expect it to happen overnight. That's not reality. We're playing a long-term game. Right, we want sustainability, so it's going to take us to really delve deeper into these project ideas and then make sure the right people can work on these projects. There will be a better together team, right?
Okay,
so these individuals will oversee the projects. Then there's going to be some committees that's going to actually work towards the projects, who reports back to the better together team to make sure that these projects are on par and we're moving towards those outcomes that we're going to identify.
Michael Outlaw, how is this managed? Is this a project of the city? Is this a partnership between the city and Ben Franklin? Just so I get a better picture of how this is structured.
Well, the onus is going to fall on the city.
Okay.
Right, and the partnerships we're going to develop throughout the community.
Okay.
Right, to make sure that all these, not all these projects, but to make sure that the ones that kind of like landed on the top of the spectrum gets put forth. So we haven't decided, who's going to take certain leads on certain projects yet.
Yeah, it's still new.
It's still new, but it's going to happen. We're actually going to meet sometime this week to begin to strategize on some next steps in this process.
Okay.
The first step was we received over close to 160 of these questionnaires back during the People's Summit. So we have to then take all these 156 responses
Wow.
and then rank them
Yes.
and then put them in certain categories.
And once again, the responses came for businesses, people,
Yep.
The entire community.
the entire.
Community. And so who was in the room, I think is important. So
Yeah.
the initial breakdown of this project, we identified 7 areas. The first area was arts and entertainment, right, which is imperative to anything that we do. Art expresses art expresses history, of all cultures, right?
Yeah.
So it was important to have arts and entertainment in the room. We had business owners in the room, businesses, people from the education department was in the room, or education. Social services, which is the family structure, they're in the room. Government, EPD, the mayor's office. We have representatives from Governor Wolf's office in the room, Representative Bob Mercy's office. So we had people in the room from the government sector who understands the importance of being better together. The media was in the room. We actually had people at the table who actually participated in the supper, who covers the news.
That's good.
Pat Howard, Lisa Thompson, Kevin Flowers, they're in the room. And then we had people from the faith community. So those were the 7 areas of people who were in the room. And again, it's important to have them in the room because those 7 areas impact our lives on a daily basis.
And that's everything.
That's everything, right? And that is the community that we live in. And what's the beauty of it is we had ethnic representation across all those 7 areas, right? And that's the beauty of, like, that's what made the People's Supper so powerful and so profound, is we took everyday establishment and we intentionally identified diversity and brought them to the table.
This is wonderful. Time always sneaks
It goes
by us.
it goes quick, but just very
Yeah,
very
sure.
quickly. So there's two aspects to this, right? There's the cultural shift component, which is absolutely critical. That has to be the platform before you can do anything else. The people of the community have to first believe.
Buy into it.
There's a huge financial element to this as well. There's lots of statistics, and maybe another time we can talk about them. And
Yes,
we'll
we
certainly
will.
talk about at the Rotary when we make our presentation.
Yes.
More diverse communities, companies, families are more successful financially
Yes.
and
Yes.
generally in the community. I mean,
Yeah.
time immemorial, we can point to all kinds of statistics. So as Erie rises once again, having everyone's boat float, or
Yep.
rise
Float the boat, yeah.
right, is imperative, and that's really what this is all about.
I can see people raising their hands and saying, "How can I get involved?" So, how do they find? You're easy to find.
Yes.
You're at the city.
Yes.
You have an office there. I'm sure they can call you, right, Michael?
They can, 870-1236, or they can email me at moutlaw@erie.pa.us.
And they can always call City Hall and
Yes.
find you one way or the other,
Yes,
either
yes.
up front or out and about, because I know you don't sit still at all. And
But I think also
Yes.
ways for people to get involved is to have their own People's Supper at their house.
yeah, what a
Right?
great idea.
I mean, so for example, like this past 4th of July, Brian invited us, my family and other communities, to his home, and you saw a true representation of community, right? So host your own People's Supper.
I love it.
You know, begin to have your own conversation. Have your church host a People's Supper.
Yes.
Right? I mean, there's people can do this, right? We have the blueprint. Reverend Jen Bailey, Faith Matters, and the People's Supper, Kay Scary. Those are the individuals who put this whole program on. And there's someone else I have to mention.
Sure.
Lennon Flowers.
Yeah.
Lennon Flowers broke sound barriers to be with us on June 25th. But these are the individuals who put this whole platform together. Again, Reverend Jen Bailey, Kay Scary, and Lennon Flowers. Please Google them. And if you want to host a People's Supper, they would be more than willing to assist you in that capacity.
We're going to have you back, because I can see that this is step one, or maybe it's a little beyond step one. I can see that you both have put an incredible amount of work into it. The community is reacting well to what you've done.
Yes.
And Brian, do they call you, or should they?
Well, at Ben Frank Bryan on
Is that
Twitter
okay?
is always the best way
Okay.
to reach me. But
I'm sure they can
Michael's
find
phone
Michael
number
Outlaw
and
easy
Michael's
enough. He's at
email,
City
yeah.
Hall, yeah. In case they don't want to call you, they can do that address for you and
At
offer their
Ben Frank Bryan.
at Ben Frank Bryan. Thank you both. This
Thank
was
you, Tom.
most educational. It's an insight.
welcome.
It's certainly proactive, and I want to congratulate you and all your constituents for starting this up.
And that's the right word. It is a startup.
Yes.
Like we are literally
you're an
at the
expert at,
at the very beginning of a generational conversation about how we move our community
From
forward.
what I've seen, I think you're already successful, and thank you for visiting WQLN. We really appreciate that.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
I'm Michelle Martin. These days, it seems like just about everybody is choosing sides and doubling down on talking points. Here at NPR, we try to cut through the noise with meaningful and respectful discussions with people from all perspectives, backgrounds, and walks of life. Join the conversation every weekend on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Saturday and Sunday afternoons at 5 on WQLN Radio.
Hi, this is Jeff Hanley, host of Jazz Happening Now. Each week we listen to some of the latest jazz recordings, and I think you'll be thrilled by what today's jazz musicians are doing and saying. The recording industry has changed, but the music is as alive and as vibrant as ever. The future of jazz is happening right now, if you just listen. And please do.
Sunday night at 6 on WQLN Radio.
Welcome to We Question and Learn. Today we're honored to have Nicole Reitzell. And you're the Erie Downtown Development Corporation title. What's your official title now?
So my official title, I am the Vice President of Community Engagement and Social Impact.
Well, what an honor to have you here.
Oh, thank you.
So how did you get involved with the Erie Downtown Development Corporation? How did that come about?
Yeah, well, it has been an immense honor to be in the role that I am. So I haven't had the most linear career path, as you can tell from my LinkedIn profile
good.
there.
Hey, just to let the college kids know, you don't have a linear career
Right,
anymore,
that's
right?
true.
Right.
And so I started my career as a paramedic, actually, at Emergicare. I was a paramedic for 10 years there and really enjoyed that.
Wow.
But that was a great experience. I got to really come to know every corner of the city in that role. Got to help a lot of people
others
and
that
make
you
it.
may not want to talk about.
Yeah, well, it was a really good experience. So, in my time at Emergicare, I started to write grants and do a little bit of fundraising on the side, and that turned into a part-time job there, which turned into a full-time job there. And I've really been in development and fundraising ever since. I was at the Philharmonic and the
Yes, I remember. You did a great job at the Philharmonic.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And was at Hammett Health Foundation. Loved my work there.
You spent almost 3 years there.
I did,
Yeah.
and we were really worked a lot on the school-based health center at Wayne School during that time.
Marvelous.
Which probably tops the list of things I'm most proud of in my career. That was really an awesome project. So enjoyed working at Hammett Health Foundation and was at the zoo just prior to coming to the EDDC.
How did this start? Let's give people a
Sure.
little primer as to how this all came about.
So, as many in the community remember, there was a comprehensive plan that was put together in 2016. When that was completed, the chairman of our board, Tim Nicastro, he and some other community leaders, business leaders got together and were really starting to think through who was going to take ownership of implementing this plan. And he asked a specific question to the author of that plan, Charles Buki. He said, this is a great plan, but where do we start? And what he was told was that we really needed to start in the core of the city, and that Cincinnati's 3CDC organization would be a good model to consider replicating in
Yes,
Erie.
have you been to Cincinnati? I'm sure you
I have,
having
yes.
seen this.
Yeah, I have been to Cincinnati. And so at that time, that group of community leaders, they went to Cincinnati, they learned best practices from both the 3CDC and other communities that have revitalized their downtowns. And that is how the EDDC was formed in 2017.
Well, and I've traveled. I don't fly anymore, so I drive, and I've driven from here to Bentonville, Arkansas, and I will probably tell you that Bentonville, Arkansas, and Fayetteville are two model little towns that you should see. It's unbelievable.
Bentonville, is that the
Corporate
Walmart?
headquarters of Walmart.
Okay, yes, okay.
The fortune of that is that Sam Walton's original Ben Franklin store was there, which became Walmart.
Interesting.
And there's some money there that they're
I'm
able
sure.
to implement a town square that looks better than most people's gardens, quite frankly.
sure.
But even Fayetteville, the University of Fayetteville, which has almost 25,000 students, these little towns have capitalized on their assets, and they're just beautiful.
Absolutely.
The old stone paved streets. Doesn't hurt that's a few dollars that come into town and help develop that are almost altruistic in nature,
Right.
not necessarily development. But Erie has so much potential because we have something they don't have. We have this lake view.
Yes, we do.
this
Erie has tremendous assets. There's so many things that make the Erie community a great place to live and raise a family. And along with that, we've also had our challenges. So, but I believe that we are really in a point in our city's history where we can really work together as a community and capitalize on those strengths and really change the trajectory of our region and our community.
So who did this development plan again? You mentioned there was a study done.
Yeah, there's actually been several studies done that have really informed our work and our putting our initial plans together.
Yes.
Before any of us were hired, the board members, the founding organizations, contracted with a company out of Brooklyn, New York called HRNA.
HRNA. Okay,
Yes, and
right.
they did a study that really spoke to the demand for market rate residential housing in downtown, which was great information.
In realistic terms, places
Yeah.
that people can afford to live.
Absolutely.
How about that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Nice places.
Right, and
Yeah.
we found that we really do have an abundance of subsidized or low-income housing in the downtown core of the city. So in order to sort of balance out the market, there really is a demand for more of that market rate residential units as well.
Is this new construction or renovating older buildings? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a little of both,
Little bit of
actually.
both, yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be a little bit of both.
Yeah, so that gives everyone an opportunity to move to, live in, and enjoy downtown.
Absolutely.
Well, you and I were talking as you walked in the door about young people not driving anymore. There's whole neighborhoods in Pittsburgh. They're populated with employees and companies that have students and 30 to 40-year-old. They don't have cars.
Yeah,
They
that's
don't
true.
care.
Right, and Erie, I don't know how quick our community will be to adopt that lifestyle. I'm not sure. I guess it remains to be seen.
Sure.
But with the area that we're working in, which is 3rd to Perry Square, Holland to Sassafras, there's
okay.
only about 800 people who live in that area, but more than 8,000 who come there to work every day. So with all of those, anchor employees downtown, we really can create opportunities for people to live
Is
within
there space?
walking
Or
distance.
would you have to start bulldozing things down like they did in Columbus? And
There-
Charlotte took 50, 60 acres to the ground.
That's a good question.
How do we well, maybe there's some good things to be developed there.
There really are, and there is space. So unlike a lot of these cities that are really booming and end up with a housing crisis where there's a shortage of housing,
Yes.
Erie has an abundance of property and housing. And what we're finding in downtown is most of the buildings are underutilized, vacant in a lot of cases. The properties that the EDDC purchased along North Park Row, 80% of those
please,
buildings.
I didn't mean to
Yeah.
interrupt you.
No,
Please
that's okay.
tell. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
You
so-
bought buildings.
So we purchased about 100,000 square feet of property along North Park Row, and 80% of those buildings is
yeah.
completely vacant.
Now, when you say vacant, are those second story?
Yes. Yep. The upper
I remember
floors.
years ago I worked in the insurance industry. One of the issues was that you couldn't put anybody on the second floor. You had bad fire escape, bad egress, life safety issues.
Yeah.
Is that
So there's-
something that would be addressed, I guess?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And those buildings are a good example of ones that really need to be taken down to the studs. So those
Can you
buildings
say that
have-
again, please?
They need to be demolished down to the
okay,
studs of the
okay,
buildings.
You're
So-
saying, just leave the beautiful stone structure.
Exactly, yeah.
They probably have wonderful basement space for storage or other. Well, there's where the new food.
Yes.
I want to call it a grocery store, but it's more of a co-op.
Yeah. So
That has huge space in it.
in those spaces,
Yeah.
we're planning to create a food hall in the former Sherlock's and Park Place space.
Oh, wonderful.
So for any who aren't familiar, you can think of it as kind of a higher end food court, but with all
Yeah.
local vendors. So, not your typical food court vendors, but they could be local restaurants who want another location. It could be a startup business that isn't ready to go into a restaurant space of their own, but they can manage a small space within the food hall and with communal seating so that, if you want to go to lunch and someone you're going to lunch with wants to have pizza and someone else
And
wants
you're all
to have
downtown.
sushi.
There's
it's-
8,000 some people, you said? Maybe
Absolutely.
more.
Yes,
Obviously more.
it's ideal. Yeah.
It's ideal. So
So.
you can meet someone from Hammett and you're working at PNC, get together and have a little lunch and not have to worry about moving an automobile.
Absolutely.
Well, that's
yeah.
wonderful. So is there a master plan, a drawing of some sort?
They are being put together
They
now.
are?
So we're right now in the schematic design phase of the North Park Row projects in particular, still trying to determine we certainly have plans for the building, But all of the buildings downtown, as you had mentioned, especially the older ones, they need to be completely
Upgraded.
renovated.
So you've got
Elevators,
the-
staircases.
So you've
all
got
that.
the buildings, you put the elevators in, you put the fire escapes and other fire safety issues in, and then there's a for rent sign, or do you sell the buildings? Or
So
both?
the model that we're following is one that was used in Cincinnati,
Yes.
where we'll own the buildings, we'll do the renovations, and
great.
in Cincinnati they felt it was really important to maintain control or ownership of at least the ground floor, to have some control over what kinds of businesses go in there, to ensure that the amenities that are needed downtown can be there.
And,
then,
and you're not being discriminatory. What you're saying is you don't want someone going in there and just putting some comic book shop or junk book shop. You want something that's a bookstore.
well, we're big fans of bookstores,
Oh,
so
thank you for
so that
saying
might be a
Me
bad
too.
example. Of,
Well, no, I'm just saying there's things that develop in inner city and outer city, even in some downtown areas where there's some money. It's just not
Sure.
attractive.
Right, and even things like one of the things we've said is we're really trying to create this authentic Erie downtown experience. So, as an example, I mean, if we did not have control of those spaces, it could be every franchise that you can think of along State Street. And that could be any city USA. That's not what we're trying to create.
Yeah.
We need to create opportunities for businesses, local employees. And so that's what those ground floors will be.
And there
used
are
for.
people downtown available to shop and participate in these
Absolutely.
storefronts or whatever services.
Absolutely,
service
and that market
businesses.
is only growing as
Oh, wow,
residential
the beauty industry
units
is
are.
exploding.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
Folks like to be pampered.
Yeah,
They
that's
do.
true. Who doesn't?
Who doesn't? So that's the major plan. So it's more of I don't want to call it retail. Would you call it retail, or would it be
Yeah.
community type retail?
Right.
Yeah. Attractors.
Absolutely. Retail and, those daily amenity type businesses. The North Park Row block, we hope to create a culinary arts district. So have the
Yeah.
best of Erie food and beverage all co-located in that.
Well, you don't
area.
come. You come armed with this. You have some funding.
We do.
You have funding.
Yeah, absolutely. So the founders of our organization, they put together two separate organizations, and the EDDC is the nonprofit arm of the organization, which
yeah.
something we learned from Cincinnati. That's important so that we can take advantage of philanthropic dollars, state and federal grant opportunities that are available. And then they also created the Erie Downtown Equity Fund. And that's a separate, private, for-profit organization with its own separate board of managers. And that is where the money that was raised, earmarked for property acquisition and development, the $27.5 million.
So those are entrepreneurs, right?
Well,
investors?
Those investors, right, they've invested in the fund.
Oh, okay.
And even that is not like a bank account of $27 million that's sitting somewhere.
Right.
They're commitments to the fund.
And
So
they're
if-
pledging this.
Right.
And as they see results, they're going to participate more, invest more.
Sure, and as we find projects that we want to work on, we then petition the funds or petition the equity fund
Yes.
for the funding that's needed for that project.
This is marvelous. Is there a director of ambiance? How does this all going to look? I was teasing someone about 4 years ago. I said, what you need is the director of ambiance. Because
like
in
that.
some of the neighborhoods up at Elmwood Avenue in Buffalo, they created a blue light district. And what that meant is if you wanted to, you put a neon light about 20 foot up on your building. And as this neon light stretched all the way down the street, it created a retail neighborhood. And I don't know if the blue lights are still on, the neon strips are still on, but now from downtown Buffalo all the way up to maybe the Albright Knox Art Gallery, that's a good 4 or 5 mile stretch. There's nothing but shops and ambiance and places like. So this can be done. It's very
Absolutely.
popular. People like to walk.
Absolutely, and we
Yeah.
have great partners. So we know that this work of transforming downtown is certainly not something we can do alone. Erie Arts and Culture and the Erie Downtown Partnership have been excellent partners when it comes to that placemaking and creating, as you said, the ambience of downtown.
Well, you brought up a good point. It seems like sometimes over the years, everybody ran off in different directions. And it seems in the last 5 or 10 years, that a lot of the nonprofits, for example, get together and meet in the city management and the chamber.
Yeah.
I think they meet once a month even.
Absolutely.
I don't
mean,
think people realize that there's a huge a huge coordination of efforts.
Yeah, I certainly have never seen the level of collaboration in the city that I see right now. So it is really exciting, and it gives us the opportunity to make more progress than ever before.
Has there been maybe there hasn't, but has there been a demographic study as to who would go down there and who would participate, or?
So that was a part of the initial HRNA study. They had a lot of information about those types of things. We've also had several focus groups, and as some might remember, the Urban Land Institute was here last summer. They provided some recommendations as well. Mm-hmm. And then, maybe most importantly, we've put together a community engagement council, and that group is really a wonderful, diverse group of people who are all coming together to help us shape what that authentic downtown Erie experience looks like. And because we want to make sure that we have every voice at the table represented, from every part of the community, residents of downtown, what do they need, what are they looking for, and how do we create a downtown that really reflects the great strengths of the community, including our rich cultural diversity.
Exactly. I'm sure the mayor's excited about this.
Absolutely, I think so.
I'm sure he is, yeah.
We meet with the mayor every month and his
Once
team.
a month with the mayor?
We do,
Very
yeah.
good.
So we have a
Yeah.
meeting with them actually coming up this Friday.
Okay.
And they've been great partners as well.
That's good. So I printed out an article. This is radio, of course, and it's just impressive to see what this may look like. It's an exciting time for the City of Erie. What types? How do you solicit? Do you solicit businesses to be there? Are you, or you're just saying, here's the structure? Would you be interested, or are you actually calling people and saying it would be a shame if you didn't have a store right on North Park Row here, and your business? I can think of one immediately that would be very excited because they're very cultural, they're very health oriented, they're.
Well, I guess all of the above, I would say. And that is one of the things that's been a pleasant surprise since being in this role is since starting in this position, we meet with businesses at least weekly, sometimes daily, who are interested in coming downtown.
That's impressive. So you're out all the time.
Yeah, and I think our board made the decision very early on to be very public and transparent about the work that we're doing and the momentum that's building downtown. So I really think that has helped build some market confidence that wasn't there before, and has made businesses excited to be a part of it.
With that said, for sure, there are folks that want to come downtown and open a restaurant.
Yes, absolutely.
An entertainment venue. Yeah, I'm wondering how you moderate all this eventually. That's your group. That will be your responsibility.
It is, and it's also, like I said, it's great partners like the Chamber and others coming together to really shape what that looks like. Yeah. But I would say, too, the input that we're getting from the community is so valuable because it helps us to determine there's definitely some top things that people want to see downtown. They want more healthy foods. They want access to fresh foods. We're still living in a food desert in downtown, so we know that needs to be addressed.
Well, you have one store that's opened.
Yeah, so the Oasis Market, which is really exciting.
Yeah, I haven't been down there in a few months. I haven't gotten downtown. I've been out.
So that's just up the block.
That was their objective, to be, obviously, the term Oasis.
Absolutely.
Opportunity. That's a beautiful space, by the way.
It is a beautiful space, and
there used to be a space available next door too. That was interesting.
Oh, I don't know.
And then underneath all that, there's 10,000 square feet available. There's so many places that people are not aware of. Physical.
That's true.
Places.
Yeah, and we hope to really work with Oasis Market. We've talked to them about areas where we can complement things that they maybe don't provide that we could, or how we can work together and really have a good solution for downtown.
Yeah, places to park. Sorry.
That's okay. Yeah.
It's a little frustrating at times, but it's very convenient at others.
Right,
So
especially
you
in
go
a
to the
climate
Phil,
like Erie. Yeah.
Well, that's the issue. I mean, you have no trouble going to the Phil. It's the middle of winter. Who cares? You park in the ramp and you cross the street. It's not too bad. But some cities up north have had a little bit of a stress creating these walk-around districts and then not thinking about, it's January 23rd and 2 degrees outside.
Yeah.
Well, Erie's been living with that forever. But I would think the city would help in keeping things a little more clear. And I know they're getting the digital parking meters, which I was thrilled.
Yeah, the app has been a great
Isn't that-
help.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
I've seen so many cities that have that, especially college towns.
And it's funny because in meetings with the community, I usually get a couple of comments pretty regularly. One is about parking. Where will everyone park?
Where do I
The
park?
other
Yeah.
one is a school of thought around discourage people from needing to park right in front of where they're going and to get out and walk and support the ground floor businesses. So
That's the whole idea.
I don't think
Why would you not enjoy? But if you had 3 or 4 places to enjoy on
Yeah.
your way or on the way back from your meeting,
Sure.
you wouldn't think about parking because I'll stop here.
Yeah.
And that's the way Erie was 50 years ago. All the little shops that were there.
Yeah,
The
so I don't
jewelry
think it's
store.
an either or. I think it's both. I think
Add
we
it both in there.
plan for parking and also make it a more walkable downtown.
Yeah, and if we have some cold weather, we're just going to have to learn how to dress because sometimes that's fun
Yeah.
too.
Right,
But the thing
exactly.
is what you're saying, if there's a tractors down there, then this is just going to explode.
Mm.
I noticed in an article that was in Go Erie some of the opportunities, some of the stores and restaurants, particularly the restaurants that would open up. And I'm sure it would become even more enjoyable. Can you mention some of these?
Absolutely.
Oh, can you?
So, well, we are actually in conversations with many, like I said, downtown businesses, restaurants who are interested in being a part of downtown. And it's too soon to really say, construction will be complete at this time.
Sure.
And so we don't have, firm commitments from any of those. But like I said, we really do want to create a diverse offering where people can find something that they're looking for, and that when they're thinking of where to go out to eat on the weekend, it's not a matter of where they'll go. They'll come down to the Culinary Arts District, but they'll have lots of options.
And have fun.
Yep,
Yeah,
lots of
before
choices.
you go to the Phil or whatever
Or
you
after.
want to do.
Yeah,
or
exactly.
whatever big events that are downtown. Let me call this the for-profit side of this venture. So that money is contingent as to how successful you are getting businesses downtown?
No, not exactly.
No?
That
Okay.
funding is committed for the acquisition and development of properties.
It's just,
and that's
to
it.
create the environment. In
Correct.
other words, strip the building down, make a space available.
Absolutely.
Coffee shop goes in, they may want to put their own workings. And it seems like that's starting already. Don't you feel that way?
I absolutely do. For anyone who goes downtown or goes to Ember and Forge,
Yeah.
you can't go there without running into at least 10 people you know.
And what I liked about it was the building and the ambiance. It struck me as
Absolutely.
exactly
Beautiful.
what happens in other cities where you preserve a beautiful building.
Yeah.
You go in, you have a lot of fun.
It's a great example
People
of a
are
good
really
success
happy
story.
to be there. And you have arts and culture places right around the corner.
Yeah.
And this could be. What about? Let's go back to the word ambiance. What about trees and plantings and stuff? There's some effort now, but
Yeah.
is that part of your plan?
So the
Is
city.
that the city's portion of this?
Yes, the cities,
Okay.
the public spaces are under the city's control, but they did put together a master plan
They
for
did.
streetscaping.
That's wonderful. Yeah.
That is about a $54 million plan, I believe. They did have some funding allocated from an RCAP grant a few years ago.
Yes.
But there's still, still work to be done on raising funds to actually implement that plan.
But if they see what is developing, like the folks that you bring downtown, that gives them a feel for what would look good.
Yeah.
Because when you go to these small Midwest towns, the first thing you see is hanging baskets and you see trees and plantings, and you see some people come and do some gardening. You have the Pennsylvania Conservancy type organization that's willing to contribute. So
Yeah.
you're
and-
working this all as you go along, but that's okay.
Yeah, it takes,
okay.
like I said, it really takes great partners. And our role when it comes to the public spaces is around, are there things we can do to beautify? Can we add public art? We worked with...
Ooh, please.
Yes.
I didn't mean
No,
to
it's
interrupt.
okay.
I keep interrupting you because you keep throwing all these wonderful ideas. Talk about the public art. What's the concept there?
So we are working with Erie Arts and Culture on the best and best places for public art. So they could be murals, they could be sculptures, they could be art on the sidewalk. We're working on
Yeah.
a project for that. So
Yeah.
lots of creative ideas, and we're definitely interested in being a part of that. We are doing a project right now with around poetry in the park. So
how wonderful.
because this won't air until August, I
yeah,
can
yeah.
talk
So
about
the
that
time will be
because
good,
you're
yeah.
right, the timing will be good.
So-
But we put a poem on the outside of our building on the Sherlock side, on the State Street side.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So, and that just, again, it's ambiance.
Right.
This is an exciting project. You have quite a few people involved in it. The city's bought into it. Investors have bought into this. No hard, firm timeline, but I think the word soon would be nice.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we are working. Speed definitely matters in this work because we know that Erie is at kind of a tipping point in our history where we could succeed in a really big way. And so we want to make sure that we're helping do everything we can to make sure Erie tips in the right direction. So we're working as quickly as we can. And we're also, in terms of what the community can expect, there are some who believe it should be more of an HGTV process where 60 minutes later we can come back and have everything finished and beautiful. But we know it's going to take
a little longer than
several
that.
years,
Yeah.
2 or 3 years. But Erie will look very, very different 5 years from now than it does today.
And it's going to be an exciting time and an attractor for young people to stay.
Absolutely.
And I mean young, anybody under 50.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And thank you for your good work and for your outline. And if someone had a question or wanted to get in touch with you, or better yet, they have an idea and they'd like to participate in your wonderful plan here, how would they find you? How would they find you?
Well, they could certainly visit our website. We're also on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter.
Oh, okay.
So
They'll
they
find you.
could contact us that way. But we're always looking for ideas. We've been hosting a coffee and conversations with the community where people can just stop down.
And you just announce those when they're
Yes,
Oh,
yeah.
when is there one in August?
So
at
the
all?
next one will probably be in the first part of September. So
Excellent.
once we get those scheduled, we'll be sure to let you know.
We'll be watching
But
for
that's
that.
just a very informal opportunity for people to stop down and ask questions.
Well, that's how
or-
things start. And it's
Yeah.
amazing how once people hear about something like this, how excited they get. And as wonderful and as appreciative we are of our wonderful suburban neighbors, there's nothing wrong with having a branch or a main store downtown.
Absolutely.
And have a branch in the suburbs. Or if you want to keep your suburban digs, open a branch downtown, even if you open a little store. Quite frankly, sometimes these little places are better than buying billboards. No offense to the billboard company. Sometimes a place to go is as good as advertising as buying millions of dollars of media. People like to
true.
have experiences.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for being
Thank
here.
you.
This
Thank
is
you for
great.
having me.
You're doing a great job, and we'll call you again, and hopefully you'll come visit us again and give us an update if that's
All
okay.
right. Absolutely. I'd be happy to. Thanks, Tom.
Nicole Reitzell, and you can get a hold of her at the Erie Downtown Development Corporation, who's all over the web. They'll find
right.
you. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.